Hello, this is Andreas and I'll be teaching you in how to use selections in Photoshop, most of all to do extractions in pictures. This is the folder we're working with. It's called T3 Selections and Extraction. Inside of this folder we got 3 different folders. We're going to open up the first one, Selections in General, and inside of it is some pictures. So I'll just open this up in Photoshop. So what is selections? Well, we have some different selection tools up here in Photoshop. Next to the move tool we have our rectangular marquee tool, elliptical marquee tool, and some line tools. We also got a lasso tool and some different variants of the lasso, and we got the quick selection tool and magic wand tool. This video will not be featuring pen tool, which is actually also used for selections, and it will not be featuring color range, which is also used for selection. Okay, so let's start out with this. What is a selection? Well, a selection is you selecting a specific region of a picture. I just tried using the rectangular marquee tool and I selected an area by just clicking and dragging and releasing my mouse button, and thus this area is selected. Now, what can you do with that area? Well, when it's selected, you can actually do anything with that area. You can color inside of it. You can erase something inside of it if you have a bigger brush. And you can actually move that area with the move tool and so on. So there's the selection itself makes it possible to just edit locally in that one area. You can also use, let's say, image adjustments to adjust the levels or of that area. You see now I'm editing just the apples and the fruit in that area, but not anywhere else in the picture. So a selection is you choosing a specific region of a picture to only specifically make changes to that one area of the picture. That's what selections is about. I'll go all the way back. So if you wanted, for example, to have a text box inside of a picture, you could draw a rectangular marquee selection. You could draw a rectangle using the rectangular marquee selection tool, and simply just, let's say, fill it with a color. I'm gonna hold down Options key and delete, and then it will fill it with foreground color. That's Options delete, Alt delete, and that will fill this area with foreground color. So now I have a box and I could start writing, let's say, some text inside of it. Hello. There. Yeah. So just making simple shapes is one possibility inside of Photoshop. I'm just gonna go back in history. If I were to draw specific shapes inside of Photoshop to get, let's say, a text box, I would create a new layer before doing so. Otherwise, whatever I make inside of here is a permanent change to the picture. So if I try to move that now, it will say that's not possible because it's actually a part of the picture. You see, if I move anything in this picture, I'm going to move the entire picture. So I just melted that part into the picture. It's a permanent change. It's like, you know, throwing paint on the canvas. When the paint is dry, you can't move it again. So if I were to make this a movable object, I would need to create a new layer. So I'm just gonna go back in time, gonna undo in history. That's a great panel. If you can't find history, just find it up in window. Here is history. Okay, so I'll create a new layer, and here you can just simply click and drag, again, a rectangular shape, and I'll just fill it again with foreground color. Let's say I want another foreground color. I'll click over here and I'll just select a fruity color, click OK, hold down Options and click delete. filling it with green color. Okay, so now I have my object and it's in a separate layer because I created that new layer. This means I can actually move that separately without the image behind being affected. The next part is that if you want this selection to be removed, because right now it's telling the picture you can only edit locally in this area where the selection is highlighted. If I want to remove that so I can edit the entire picture, I would choose select, deselect, so I remove that selection. So now the selection is removed. The shortcut for selecting, for removing a selection, the shortcut for that is just select, deselect. That's Command D. Command D. On a PC, that's Control D. Yeah. Okay, so if I created both of these objects on the same layer, they will move simultaneously because they're on the same layer, so they're attached to each other. If I wanted to move just one of these items, I could actually select that on this one layer and then move it, and then it would be possible to move them separately. If I just always wanted them to move separately, it would have been easier if I just made sure this was on a layer for itself. So I'll just remove this object, actually create a new layer and just create it on this layer, and I'll put in a different color. That's Option Delete to create this object. And now you can see I can move this object. It's on a separate layer. I'll just deselect, that's Command D. And you'll notice I can move this as I want, and it's not affecting the background. I can move it at any time away from the background, so it's not actually damaging anything on the original picture. Okay, and you can make any kind of selection. The rectangle is one example. You could also make circles or ellipse shapes. So if I want to make a perfect circle on my picture, I'm just going to select a different color, create a new layer. If I want to create a circle, a perfect circle, I would hold down Shift, and that would force my selection to become a perfect circle, not an ellipse, but instead a perfect circle. The same goes for rectangle marquee tool. If you use this and hold down Shift, it will become a square instead of a rectangle. See, a square instead of a rectangle. So that's by holding down Shift, the Shift key. Yeah, so you can create different shapes. I'm just going to create a perfect circle right now, and I'll just fill it with red, my foreground color, Options, Delete, and you see now I have a circle shape in my picture. Let's say I wanted to color this a different color. I could simply just put in, let's say, yellow, and take my brush, and I could just start coloring it inside of this. So I'm just making sure that it's not the color is not going anywhere outside of this object because I have this object selected. Okay, so how can I actually reselect an object? Once I deselected, I just deselected my object. How can I reselect this object again? That's quite simple. You simply just go into your, down here on the layers icon, you see there's 4 different icons for each layer. If I right click my layer thumbnail, I can choose select pixels, and that way it simply selects the entire shape again, and that way I can't color outside of it. So I'll deselect, and I'll try doing that to the green object. Simply right click the layer icon and choose select pixels. There's actually also a shortcut for that. if you want to select the object, you simply just click Command and then Command click your layer icon, and that will select that object as well. So that's the shortcut for doing so. So right click to choose select pixels, or simply just Command click the icon. Yes. So what other shapes are there? Well, we got lines as well. That's if you want a line that runs through your picture. I'll just create a new layer and simply just click once. You see that's a row. You can also instead choose for there to be a column. This column is 1 pixel wide, but if you wanted to have a wider column, you could simply just go to Select, Modify, Expand, and choose for it to be 20 pixels wider. And that will create a line that's thicker than it was originally. And I'll just fill that with some color just so we can see it's actually there. So if you want to create a random shape, you could use the Lasso tool. I'll just create a new layer, and you could simply just draw anything, and you got a selection now. I'll fill it with color, and there we have it. If I suddenly want to delete some parts of this object, I could simply just use my eraser tool to remove parts of it. I could also actually select parts that I want to remove. Let's say I want to remove this part right here. I'll simply select it and then click delete to remove that specific part. So likewise, I could do it right here and then delete. Yeah. If you want to add to your selection, let's say I'm painting an object, I'm trying to create an object with my selection tool, and suddenly I want to add parts to this selection, I can hold down Shift, then draw new stuff to this selection. I don't know what I'm drawing, but I'm holding down Shift to add to the shape. Then if I want to remove from the shape, I can hold down Alt, the Options key, to remove from the shape. So Alt removes from selection, Shift adds to the selection. And when I say Alt, it's the key which is also named Options. I'll just fill this with some color. Let's give it this color, and I'll fill it up, and there we have our fascinating shape. Okay, so I'll just remove all of these fascinating shapes. Just select them all by clicking the one at the top, then holding down Shift, clicking the one at the bottom, and simply just clicking delete. And so the other tools we can use is polygonal lasso tool to draw a shape by clicking here, there, and there. And I can just draw a shape consisting of straight lines. So that's also a tool. We mainly use that to draw, you know, shapes that can be used for, let's say, a text box or a box that adds graphic to the picture. I think that's probably the selection tool you'll use the least inside of Photoshop, the polygonal lasso tool. That was a hard one. So the magnetic lasso tool is actually just like a magnet. It tries to find contrast on a picture and that way it creates its selection. So I'm just gonna create a fast selection down here, and you'll notice that you can drag that around the object and it will try to find contrast. So it made an okay example here. I'll just try to zoom in using Command+ and using the space bar to scroll on my object. But you see some parts of it weren't selected, so I can just hold down Shift to add to the shape, like that. And I can actually click inside of it to close my selection. So see, I can go inside of the object like this, and then go all the way back to where it started, and then just double click to make sure it's connected. If you ever need to sometimes your object, your tool keeps selecting. If you ever need to get this selection to just stop, you can always click Escape. You can always go out of the selection tool if it's adding anchor points like now, and you just want it to stop because it's really just messing up your screen. You can always just click Escape. That's when using the magnetic lasso tool. Finally, some of the quick tools inside of Photoshop is the quick selection tool and magic wand tool. I'll just deselect the current selection, and you see magic wand tool is perfect for selecting one color. So I'll just click once on this white area, and you'll see that it actually selects practically all of the white in the picture. Of course, there is some drop shadow from these fruits, and that will create some areas that are not selected, but I can then change the tolerance up here at the top, try setting it to, let's say, 50, and I'll try clicking once again on the picture, and you see that that will select more of this drop shadow area. But to be sure that you get everything selected, I would probably choose another tool, let's say the magnetic lasso tool, and just go through that area by holding down Shift, because right now I'm adding to the background. I'm selecting the outer regions, not the inner regions. And you know, I can just, well, that was a bit too fast. And just go all the way back, and there we have it. And to this part, I need to delete from the selection because I selected too much. So I'll hold down Alt, and I'll start just deleting from the inside precisely. So remember, holding down Alt will remove, holding down Shift will add. And I'm adding right now because the selection is currently in the white areas. So if I want to add more white area, I need to hold down Shift. If I sound a bit tired, it's because I just woke up. Cheers. By having all of this selected, I could actually color it all differently. Let's say I want to give it a different color. I could simply just start changing the hue inside of the picture. Right now I'm altering the drop shadow because it's the background I have selected. So could I change this to be the foreground that's being affected instead? Yes, I'll click cancel, I'll go to select, and I'll click inverse, select inverse. This way now what is selected is the inside region. And how can I see that? Well, if I go back, if I inverse it again, you can see that the marching ants, the selection is highlighted all the way to the upper part of the picture, left and right part of the picture, and the bottom part. That's called marching ants. So if I say select inverse, you'll notice that they are no longer highlighted. So that way I know it's the inside of the picture. I know that this selection is not the best one. There are some parts which are not selected as they should be, but let's just see what we're able to do. So I'll go to image adjustment and try, let's say, hue saturation, and you'll notice that when I change this, all of the fruits inside of the picture will change their color into looking kind of special. Yeah. So that's what you use selections for. You use them for selecting specific regions so these specific regions can be affected by whatever edit or change you want them to be affected by. The fastest selection tool is the quick selection tool in general. You simply just run it through an area. I'm just going to select a bigger brush. You simply just run it through an area and it will smart think what it is that it will make Photoshop make a lot of calculations to figure out where the contrast is big and where it's low, and it will make a selection from that. And you'll notice that I selected too much, but I can just hold down Alt to remove from the selection. And you'll notice how fast it actually selects this kiwi down here. And that was perhaps too fast, so I'll just go through this area with Shift, and hopefully I'll get a decent selection. And go through this apple with Alt. And you'll just notice that it's very fast at actually selecting the shape of an object. This tool works miracles. Quick selection tool works miracles when it's a picture where there are a lot of contrast between the background and the foreground. It actually is great as well on some pictures where the contrast isn't too good, but sometimes you need to help the tool out by using Alt and Shift to add or remove from the selection. But this way you can see this made a much better selection than the one I made just before. I'm just gonna add to this area as well. And I'll just try this time using color balance instead. And you'll see that, yeah, of course, first I'll say select inverse, and then we'll try again, image adjustment, color balance. And here you'll see that you can just change the appearance of the inside objects, the objects inside of the selection. So this was just a quick summary of what can you use selections for. We're mainly going to use it actually to extract from pictures, and that's what the following exercise will be about. Cutting out objects from one picture and placing them on top of another picture. I hope you're looking forward to it. Yeah.